Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Milagros Phillips. Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
Oh, good, and I'm so happy to hear you. We had a wonderful
Yeah,
conversation the other day, and so I'm so looking forward to today.
me too.
So I started reading your book, and I'm a bit fascinated with it.
Oh,
It's
great. Which one?
the one you sent me.
Oh, the Cracking the Healer's Code. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And it's very fascinating to see this take that you've taken on racism and the whole topic. But I would like to start first with the topic of milagros, your name, because that's miracles, right?
It is. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so I would like to know, you have told me that you got to know A Course in Miracles at some point and started teaching later on for a long time. I'd like to know how your life was before you got to know A Course in Miracles and what changed in your view of the world afterwards and how that progressed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was going through a life transition. I've been married for like 17 years and had a family, and we were about to get divorced. And prior to the Course in Miracles, I had already done a lot of personal growth work, and I went to a workshop of some kind. I don't even remember what it was, but there was a woman there, and she and I locked eyes. And at the end of it, she came up to me and she goes, "I want to know who you are." And I was just like, I know, I wanted to know who you are too. So we ended up sitting down at this hotel and having coffee and whatever else we ended up having. And we were having this conversation, and she told me, if she asked if I'd ever heard of the Course in Miracles, and I was like, no, tell me about it. She told me about it, and of course I went out and got the book right away. But what was interesting about that day was that when we were finished, we asked for the check, and the waiter said, no, no check for you. And we were like, what? And he said, no, no check. It's fine. And he just walked away. And the two of us looked at each other and we just burst out laughing. We're like, okay, miracles. There we go, right? and so but that began a journey, and she was my first Course in Miracles teacher. I loved the book. Just like ate it up. I just kept reading and reading it, and it spoke my language, and it was in a lot of different ways. Like, I know very often, people study the course in groups because the language seems a little convoluted sometimes, and it's easier, to sort of break it down and all. But to me, it read like Shakespeare, and I loved Shakespeare when I was a youngster. So it was just like, oh my God, I love this book. Um, so I studied and studied, and then I ended up teaching it. And then it became kind of like the household thing. Like when my daughter left for college, I asked her what she wanted as a gift for her room. And I thought she was going to say, like, a new comforter set or something. She's like 17. And she said, I want a Course in Miracles book. When my son left home to go away to private school, he also asked for a Course in Miracles. And I remember he used to go teach at a camp in the mountains in California every year. And this was the first year that he went, and one of the young counselors died, and he found himself doing grief counseling with these little kids and with the rest of the campers. And at one point, he tried to get a hold of me, and we kept missing each other because he was out in the field. So back then we didn't have cell phones and stuff, and so he was trying to call me, and I was trying to call him. We kept missing each other, and it took like 3 days when I finally got him on the phone. And I said, "What happened? Are you okay?" He said, "I'm fine." He said, "When I couldn't get a hold of you, I went and I opened up the Course in Miracles, and I got all this comfort." and I felt like everything was going to be all right. So it's been, the Course in Miracles has been and continues to be. I will forever be a student as well as a teacher of A Course in Miracles, because it's been so life transforming, not just for myself, but also for my family.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so it changed your view of the world. Did it flip
Oh,
it on the head, or what happened?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the thing, and I was talking to someone recently about, I talk about the Course in Miracles all the time. I quote it when I go to do my corporate work, like, but what I loved so much about the course is that it simplifies everything. It speaks in one language, and it takes duality and simplifies that by saying, if it's not love, it's fear. If it's not, if it's fear, it's not love, right? And so I based my work on that. My race work is based on that. It's, if it's not love, it's fear, and if it's fear, it's not love, right? And so it really did, it changed so many things in my life. Certainly my view and understanding of the importance of emotions, and the role that emotion has in our lives, and just the simplification of, oh, okay, yeah, I'm doing fear right now, and using that as a guide to lead me back to love. And what is it that I need to do in this moment so that I can get back to my home base, which now is love. And at one point, it was just pure fear. That doesn't mean that I don't go into the fear realm. But what it does mean is that I have an awareness now when I'm there, and I can choose to stay there or I can choose to leave, because I know that there's someplace else I can go. So it really has changed everything.
That is a huge change.
It really is. It really
Yeah.
is.
So have you read the book Europe and the People Without History?
I have not. No.
Then you better. It's all about how the whole thing with slaves and so on started,
Oh, wonderful.
and it's from an anthropologist.
That's great. I'd love to see that. That sounds like a really great book, right up my alley. I'll have to check
Yes,
it
I
out for
thought of it
sure.
when I was reading your book, and I thought, "Whoa, that's some information you could use to go
Yeah.
deeper."
Good. Good, good, good. Yeah, yeah. I'm always looking to go deeper. A lot of the history that I have in the book that you're currently reading, most people don't know that history. They don't. They have no association with the Vatican, and how, all this stuff got started, who started it, why it started it, where it started. Like, we don't learn that stuff in school.
Yeah, that's a
And so,
pretty hefty thing. They actually had two directions in it
mm,
until it crystallized into what I think you're speaking about in the book.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh
But
yeah, no, they worked on that for, yeah, for decades.
that was a changing thing. So
Mm-hmm.
there were two
Yep.
schools in Catholicism, and then one of them managed to get through, the one where they thought they can Christianize people. But before,
Mm-hmm.
the other peoples were seen like you could just do whatever you liked with them. So, anyways,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah. No,
so
this
that
is
but that's still
fascinating.
an horrible thing to see them as humans only because they can be Christianized.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
really odd. But anyways, that's
Yeah.
history, right?
Yeah.
Crazy history.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But it's the history they don't teach us in school. And
No,
as
they
you
don't
know, as
teach the history that I was speaking of in that book either in school.
yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And the thing about that is that um it's very difficult to heal without our history, because we there's no grounding, there's no context. And so it just seems like, wow, things are wild, but we don't understand why they're wild. and what brought them to the wildness that it is now, because life is a continuum. Life isn't, you know, this happened here and then that happened way over there. Like, no, those things are connected. There's a connection there. We as human beings are all connected through our DNA, and we know that now by, through the study of epigenetics. But, really having a clear understanding that life itself is a continuum, and the experiences that we're having today. And the Course in Miracles is great about that. It's like what you're experiencing now isn't now. You're experiencing yesterday, today. And it's like,
Yes.
yeah, and gaining a clear understanding of what happened yesterday helps us to understand why we are where we are today, and also where we are today, so that then we can choose to create a different tomorrow, as opposed to repeating yesterday, right?
Yeah,
So
the course
yeah.
speaks of the tiny mad idea. So
Hmm.
that's our past.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
And in racism, it's also a tiny mad idea.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
And that's and
that
it's and
has
it's a
blown
myth.
out into something terrible.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a myth that's created the reality of racism. Race is not real, but racism is. Race is an illusion. It's part of the whole, like this whole idea that there are different pockets of humans. Like, we're one human family. We're all related through our DNA, and the illusion is the separation. That's what's the
Yes.
illusion. The reality is that we are one human body, living inside the sacred body of, all that is.
Yeah.
And that all that is still lives inside of us. Like, one of my favorite pieces of, um, it was one of Greg Braden's books. I'm trying to think of the title of this particular book. Oh, I believe it's The God Code. In his book, The God Code, he talks about how they've used the atomic mass numbers and the Hebrew letters to come up with a formula that helps to read the cells of the body, and how each cell in our bodies, and we have trillions of cells in our bodies, each one of them reads like an entire library, not like a book, but like an entire library. And what he says is that they've been able to decipher the first line of this, what one might call the cell book, right? And and what it reads is God eternal within the body. How powerful is that? God eternal within the body. So each one of the cells of our bodies has that, almost like a sacred signature. It is so powerful to think about that, and to just kind of take that in. It's just, it's extraordinary. So we are just amazing, amazing beings. We're wired for connection. We are naturally connected to one another. And what is the illusion is that we're separate, and that there are pockets of different humans, and that is so not true. So, but we have been institutionalized to believe that. We've been conditioned into believing in that form of separation. And now the work for us, as in this human body, is to be aware of the fact that that separation is the illusion and not the truth, and that we have the ability to live out of the truth of our sacred connection to one another, and to truly live what we came to live, which was love, and to love one another. And I was talking to someone. I just did an interview about an hour or so ago, and I was talking about the fact that we could use the sun as an example, right? And the sun doesn't say, I'll shine on those people over there, but not those people over there. Although, of course, there's always London, right? But but the reality is that the sun just shines. It just shines. It doesn't say, I'll shine here, but not there. We have clouds that cover the sun, which is what I'm talking about when I say London, right? We have clouds that cover the sun. but the sun is still shining. The sun doesn't care that there are clouds over there. Clouds don't stop the sun from shining. And we know this now, but you get on a plane and you can't see anything because there's such a thick cloud cover. But when that plane penetrates and goes right through and up through those clouds, at the top of those clouds, there's the sun shining. If it's daytime, the sun is shining. And the sun doesn't just go, well, I'll shine here, but not there, right? The sun just shines. And we as human beings have the power to radiate that infinite love that lives within us, that is alive within every cell of our bodies, in allowing that light to shine upon the world, and just allowing that love to flow through us unto everyone and everything, regardless of who they are. And I believe that's why we're here. We are here to bring back the members of the human family by allowing the light that lives within us to just shine on everyone and on everything. I know that my personality doesn't necessarily know how to do that, but I know that there's a greater part of me that does know how to do that. And it's just waiting for my permission to allow it to do that. And so, because free will is free will, right? So out of our free will, we can choose to allow that light to shine on everyone and everything. And what an extraordinary world we can create if we choose to do that.
Yeah. We In A Course in Miracles, it says bringing the illusions to the light.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Yep.
stating the fact that the light is the stable thing, and the
Yeah.
illusions just. But the other way it doesn't work. Bringing the light to illusions doesn't work,
Mm-hmm.
according to A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And we can do that. We know how to do that, as human beings, as part of our power. But we have to choose that because there's free will, and you know we are designed so that nothing can interfere with our free will. And so it's up to us, each one of us, making an individual choice to allow that radiance and the truth to shine, and not to shy away from our shadow. Like that is just so that doesn't help anything. All it does is it sweeps it under the rug, but eventually that rug's going to come up and bite us, because you collect enough stuff underneath the rug, and the rug's going to get ripples and you could trip on it, right? So the importance of allowing that we do the best we can. We don't know what we don't know, but we can learn it if we open ourselves up to possibilities.
yeah, it's like in A Course in Miracles, it speaks of remembering, and
Mm,
remembering includes the forgetting what is not true,
yeah, exactly.
which is amazing.
Exactly.
To remember who we are,
Hmm. Yep.
we need to
Yep.
forget who we are not, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the work, and when it comes to race and racism, because it's been such a long um, trajectory of conditioning, and so very little education around what the conditioning is, and the role that it has and continues to play in our lives. We we miss a lot of information that can really help us to to really own our power when it comes to this stuff. One of the things that always um, that is always present with me is how, when we start learning about some of this history that we don't talk about. We A lot of us don't know, that's remained hidden. How often people want to stop us from learning that history. That it is a painful history, but it is the history of who we have been. And if we don't want to continue to repeat who we have been, thinking that we're creating something new, that we need to understand what has come before. Once we understand that, then the responsibility is to choose. The Course in Miracles says, choose once again. It's the responsibility to choose whether we're going to continue to repeat old patterns, or whether we're going to allow those old patterns to fade by creating something new and stop feeding the old. To just really begin to be present to the divinity and the presence of who we truly are, rather than who we have been conditioned to be. And it's, we often fail. Like, we very often will talk about things, like we talk about the patriarchy. We talk about patriarchy in when we look at governments and things like that. But I think we often deny that patriarchy is a parent. It's a parental thing. To be a parent, you need to have children, you know? And so what happens in a patriarchy is that everybody is infantilized. And when we're infantilized, and for, for obvious reasons, it's, governments have large numbers of people to control. And so they, infantilizing people allows it. What happens when you're infantilized is that you are made to be a child. And, with children, one of the things that we do is we make decisions for them until they're conscious enough to make decisions for themselves. And so, if we continue to allow ourselves to be infantilized, there will always be someone who will be making decisions for us, which means that we are not acting out of our free will. So I hope that that makes sense, that the importance of being the truth of who we are, rather than allowing ourselves to be told who we are.
Yeah, and of course in Miracles it speaks about listening to the Holy Spirit rather than
Mhm.
ego. And the Holy Spirit is described as our right mind,
Mhm.
and that it's right in the, yeah, it's within us, or better said, it's who we are.
One of my favorite lines in the course is and again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm trying to remember the exact line, but it's something to the effect of, whoever is saner of the two needs to take responsibility for the relationship. And I always used to laugh about that, because it's just sort of like, well, I never thought of that. Whoever is saner of the two needs to take responsibility for the relationship. And so the problem is, we all think we're sane until we start realizing that we can actually be truly sane. But that's a realization, that's an awareness, that's a growth cycle, right? It's a growth cycle.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, that's from passages that are speaking about the holy relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And
Yep.
there's always one of the people involved is the saner one at that moment in time.
Yep.
But
uh,
it's not a given that it's always the same person.
exactly, exactly. uh, Yeah, seriously, I just love the Course in Miracles. It truly has changed my life, and it's changed the life of a lot of people that I know. Because you find so much wisdom within that book, and so much compassion and so much love, really, that it kind of reminds you that you're okay, you know, you're fine, you're growing, you're learning, you're seeking, you're finding, so it's a very, very powerful book.
Yeah. So, would you like to go into some of your examples of how one heals from this idea that one has to have different modes of interpreting people according to what they look like or what background they have?
Mm. Yeah, so one of the things that I always remind people is when you're looking to heal from something, because something's not functioning right in your body, you go to the doctor. One of the first things they have you do is go through your history, your family history, right? And the reason they need that information is because by understanding what came before, they may be able to diagnose what's happening with you now. And by having that diagnosis, they can then give you the right prescription so that you can be better in the future. And so I always remind people that if we're going to be doing healing work around racism, we need to have some kind of historical context and some kind of historical grounding. We also need to have a sense of trauma. What is trauma? How does it affect us? Primary trauma is when something happens to you. Secondary trauma is when you hear about something happening to someone else, or you see something happen, or you read about it, or whatever. So having some kind of a sense of um, being trauma informed can be very, very helpful. And then the other thing is we need to have patience and we need to have compassion with one another as we awaken and we go through this process of healing. So for me, because we have been so well conditioned for hundreds of years around race and racism and that kind of separation of the human family, because we've gone through so much of that, having patience with each other and understanding that we're not always going to get it right, we're going to mess it up, we're going to make mistakes, and that we need to be compassionate around that, I think is it's key to the transformation. Because I think sometimes, and particularly, and sometimes with people of color, we lose patience because we've been at this for so long and we've been seeing it for so long and talking about it for so long and trying to heal from it for so long that when newbies come along and they don't get it, sometimes people lose patience. And so I always remind people that one of the first things we're going to have to do is just be patient with one another, because people don't know what they don't know. And for the most part, they've not been taught a lot of the things that they need to know to truly understand what they're dealing with. The other thing is that dealing with racial conditioning, and right now there are a lot of um, counties and states and governments in the U.S. that are calling racism a a health crisis, a social crisis. And so understanding that we're dealing with what is for some people a crisis that's happening now, for others it's a crisis that's been happening for a very long time, that people are at different places with this. And again, that's where patience comes in, and understanding. And so for me, this is the work of the spirit now. This is what we're being called to do. Racism is a global problem. It isn't just a US problem. It isn't just a Europe problem. It isn't just an Africa problem. It is a global problem. And it is a problem that can only be solved by people recognizing what the problem is, being willing to listen to those who have been suffering under that problem for a long time to help explain what is happening, and also being aware that this isn't an easy journey, but it's a journey worth taking because it is the journey of the human family. And the more that we, those of us who are here living now, are willing to clear as much energy as we can around this, the less we will leave for the next generation to clear up. And so we have a responsibility to work on this and use the tools that have been given to us as a spiritual community to begin this healing process and to assist the world in doing this deeper level of healing around this stuff. And I think that if we are willing to do that, we will make some very quick strides. Because as the Course in Miracles says, again, it's sort of like, if you start to move toward the Holy Spirit will start to move toward you, and the Holy Spirit moves faster and can come closer to you if you are willing and you are open to doing the work. But we have to open ourselves up and be willing to do it. And we also need to allow that this work is shadow work. This is the working through the shadow and the parts of us that we don't like and that we don't want to face. And the other thing about that, if we're going to use the Course in Miracle as a template, is that when we are when when the quote is prisoners set free, um, prisoners long held down, with eyes long cast down, don't exactly go jumping for joy when they're set free. And that is so true. When we have so much information now at our fingertips, information that we did not have 15, 20 years ago, that can help us grow and move forward with greater awareness, that it's I mean, it's sad that we're not using that information to truly gain a foothold and really understand this stuff. So I believe that we are at a crossroads now, which is why there's so many more people who are willing to have this conversation. I've been doing this work for 35 years. Believe me, there are so many more people in the past year who are willing to have this conversation than there were, 2, 3 years ago, even. And so, those of us who are awake to our spiritual journey, we have been given amazing tools that we can use to assist um, in the awareness of this, in the realization of what needs to happen for us to move forward. But we still have a lot of fear in the spiritual community about even opening up to have this conversation. The same fear that the rest of the world has. And it's like, listen, we didn't come in to hide behind love and light. We came in to be the love and light. Okay. you know that we came, this is the work. This is it. This is it. We're here to bring people's conscious awareness of the fact that you can't find peace, because peace isn't lost. Peace is forever there, always available to us, but you have to choose peace in order to have peace. And when we're mired in all this segregation and separation, and this one's good and that one's bad, and all, like, we're not doing the work. We get lost in the dysfunction, and that's not why we're here, and that's not why we came. At least that's not why I'm here, and that's not why I came. And I'm really clear about the fact that I'm here about the bringing forth of a new world, and we can't access that new world if we're still fighting each other, afraid of each other, seeing some groups as less than, other groups as more than. Like, if we're still doing that, that is the definition of the special relationship. That is the pure definition of the special relationship as the Course in Miracles describes it. And it's like, we can't keep doing that. The infant in us gonna have to grow up. We just cannot keep doing this. It's not working. It's just not working.
Equality is such a huge topic in A Course in Miracles as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And we all
You
are
know,
spirit, and we all are equal, and we all are infinitely loved
exactly.
and valued. And that's what we
Absolutely.
need to learn to do, to
Hmm.
infinitely love and value each other. But we can't do it alone. So we need the help of
Exactly.
spirit and of each other to do it.
Yes.
And that's what
Yes.
you're speaking of, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And we have each other. We have each other, but if we're mired in separation and segregation and parceling people out, we're not seeing it. We already have each other. What we need to do is remove the barriers that keep us from seeing each other. So what is it? The course says something to the effect of, um, it, it's not for us to look for love, but it is for us to, again, I'm paraphrasing. It's not for us to look for love, but it is for us to remove the barriers that keep us from being love and seeing love and having love and accepting love. So, in other words, love is always there, just like peace. It's always there. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go away. But we have clouds that keep us from seeing its light. And that's the clearing piece. That's the clearing piece.
Yeah, and it tells us to ask for Holy Spirit's help
Yes.
to do so.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
will I will open the floor for questions now, if
Great.
if there are questions. Otherwise, I will continue.
Okay.
I'll ask a question. Thank you for everything you said so far. I want to ask you, we're talking about the relationship and giving love, in our expressions every day with each other. But I think sometimes we don't know how to do it to ourselves, which
Mm-hmm.
then, love ourselves, which then prevents the whole cycle from moving forward. I don't know if you have any recommendations,
Mm-hmm.
how to model and encourage that.
Thank you so much. That is a great, great question, comment. Um, because for the most part, we've been conditioned to see ourselves as not enough. We we've believed that, like, we have so many not enoughs in our world, not tall enough, not pretty enough, not short enough, not skinny enough, not fat enough, not, like all these not enoughs, right? And by the time we're little children, we start believing that, and so we forget who we are, and the reality that we are more than enough. One of the things that's really been helpful to me is just taking moments, and at first it would be like, once every few days, once a week or whatever, and just admire myself. Just be in awareness of, wow, I can really appreciate myself right now. I don't need to do anything, be anything, have anything, just me. I can just appreciate myself, and I can allow myself to be in the presence of appreciation, because appreciation is an energy field. And we can enter that energy field just like any other energy field. We can enter it at any given point in time. We can choose it, right? So we can choose to be thankful for who we are, thankful for all the things that have happened in our lives, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what's brought us to this very moment in time. And so we can choose to be grateful. And that essence of gratitude, again, is an energy field. When you enter that energy field, you start to feel that. So, gratitude and appreciation. And I have to say that in my journey, I've had times when I was so angry. I was just so angry at the world and at life and at everything else. I remember one time, and I always tell this story because it was so poignant to me. I was doing a weekend of silence because, I'm a spiritual person, love and light, right? And so I'm doing a weekend of silence. And a few hours into it, all this rage came up. I have no idea where that rage came from, but it was there and it became active during the silence. So if you have to figure, my heart is beating really fast because I'm so angry and so enraged, right? And so I'm having a bodily reaction because the body makes a chemistry for everything, right? And so I'm enraged and my body's reacting to that rage. And there were times that I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was in an abyss of anger that I would never climb out of. And I just, and but I couldn't say anything to anyone. I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't process it with words, which is how I process my world is through words. Because I'm very committed when I'm going to do, my spiritual stuff, and sort of like, I committed to silence for the weekend, and so silence it was. And so I had to live with that rage and that anger and that frustration, everything that was coming up in me. And all I could do was drink water and go back and go sit and be silent. But somewhere, sometime around Sunday, it was right around 2ish on Sunday, I remember sitting down on the side of my bed and just breathing. And this incredible sense of peace came over me. I mean, I don't know, that's the peace that surpasses understanding, right? Like one moment I'm in this rage, and the next moment there's this peace that came over me. And what I realized soon after that was that I always, even during the times that I was in rage, always had access to that peace, but I wasn't conscious enough to choose it. I didn't know I had it. I didn't know I had access to it. But since that day, I've always been able to have access to it. I have to admit, there are times I choose not to choose it, okay? But for the most part, I am at least aware of the fact that, yeah, I can stay in anger, or in this moment, right here, right now, I can choose peace. It's just as simple as a choice. And I also have to say that that's a practice. Okay, I didn't come by that. Like, I had that experience, but it took time for me to process that experience into the reality. Oh, aha, I always had that choice. That's why the Course in Miracles says choose once again. Choose once again. In this moment, you can do moment and this moment and this moment, you can choose the state of consciousness that you're going to be in. You can choose that. And once you make that choice over and over and over again, you begin to realize that you have the power to choose that. And that allows you to become powerful or filled with the power that is already there and that is already yours. So, practicing states of consciousness is one of the things that has helped me tremendously to fall in love with myself, probably for the first time in my life, and to just really acknowledge what an extraordinary human being I am. And when I say I am, I'm saying you are, we are, all of us are. Because once we start loving ourselves, loving other people is so much easier, regardless of their behavior and everything else. You can see the behavior, you can call it, you can make them responsible for the choices that they've made, but you don't deny them love. So it makes such a huge difference when we fall in love with ourselves. Thank you for asking that question.
Beautiful answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you really went through a long journey to get where you are at now, and I really admire it, and
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Um, it is a journey. No way and nowhere am I there, wherever there is. Um, but I have a commitment to giving myself grace and being okay with not knowing sometimes, and always looking to the Holy Spirit for answers, and allowing those answers to come through my intuition and through synchronicities and through whatever other ways that the infinite spirit has that can touch me, so that I pay attention, right? Because ultimately that's what it is. It's like, knock, knock, knock. Are you paying attention? So, yeah.
So you told me you don't have much more time anymore, right? So
I
let's
don't. Yeah,
start
that's right. We
wrapping
only
up.
have a few minutes left. Yeah.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
so let's start wrapping up. So, do you have anything you'd like to add at, at this point that I haven't asked or anyone else has asked?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if I could ask for anything, it would be that we, as an awakened, conscious, spiritual community, begin to do this race work. That we take it on as part of this journey of being part of the human family. That we acknowledge it and realize that it the things that are happening, it's not for us to ignore them, and to move beyond prayer to actually taking action to become race literate, and to be aware that we can become racially sober and racially awake, and realize what that is, so that we can finally put it aside and just allow ourselves to love one another, and to be in each other's presence, with the realization that we carry within us that Holy Spirit, that we carry within us that essence of divinity that is unfading. So that's what I would love for all of us to do as a spiritual family.
Oh, that's so touching. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much. If anyone would like to know more about my work, they can certainly visit my website, which is just my full name.com, milagrosphillips.com. I do programs on a regular basis, and I do a 2 day intensive that's really powerful. It takes about 45 days for the information in that 2 day intensive to move through your system. And when I say your system, not just your body, mind, spirit, and emotions, through the whole system. And it's designed that way so that all the parts of you can come alive. And then I'm the author of 4 books, and you can find all those books on Amazon. My latest book that just came out is Cracking the Healer's Code, a prescription for healing racism and finding wholeness. And I just, hope that that book will give people the information that they need to begin to make that deep and powerful transformation. And I want to thank you so much, Wanako, for having me on. It's been sheer joy and a real pleasure.
I also feel very touched and thankful. You have such a healing voice as well.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, I would like to also ask everyone to leave reviews about the podcast, to share it so that more people get to know it. And yeah, wish you all the very, very best. I was going to ask you how one can reach you, but you already covered that. So thank you.
Sure, sure. You can also
So,
join my Instagram page. Follow me on Instagram.
mhm, wonderful. Okay, then I wish you all the very, very best. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Milagros. And
Thank you
I'd
so
love to
much,
keep in
Michael.
touch with you because I really feel your work is really important. And
Thank
I'd
you
like
so
to
much.
support that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And I am so glad that we have found each other through this podcast. And I know that we will be in touch. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome. And yeah, thank you everyone else for being here. And thank you to all the listeners for supporting this podcast and making it possible by listening and joining and spreading the word. Thank you so much. Bye bye.